Thank you all for joining. Today we're going to be talking about first-party data activation best practices from sort of a planning and implementation perspective, as well as use case strategy. And we're all going to kind of take this through the context of Glassdoor, their journey from early discussions pre-COVID of planning for CDP, not being ready for CDP, and going through an implementation, and essentially kind of all their core takeaways of what does it actually take to drive adoption and get to value in a cross-functional solution from data to marketing to web for that kind of end user experience. The agenda for kind of this session, we want to keep it conversational. I know this is a workshop, so if you do have questions, feel free to interrupt. Given we have partners and customers of Contentstack in here, we're going to talk about the MarTech and data activation landscape, challenges, trends, and insights. We'll dig into Glassdoor's journey and talk about kind of a few quick frameworks around driving adoption of value, and then want to save some time at the end for questions. My name is JR Leighty. I work at Contentstack, came over part of the Lytics acquisition. Super excited to be at my very first ContentCon. And on stage with me is...
Hi, my name is Vicki Law. I'm the Director of MarTech, Channel Operations and Analytics at Glassdoor.
So we're going to jump into the MarTech and data activation landscape first. I think you guys saw this slide earlier in the keynote. From a seller's perspective, because we're talking to prospects, we're talking to our customers, this feels a little bit intimidating to know how much new technology is really kind of at the forefront, whether it is data, content experience, analytics, the end user experience for mobile. There is new technology every single day, especially around AI, that is coming into the mix, that is affecting consolidation, suites, stacks, you name it. There is new technology and new companies that are getting started that are essentially available to buyers and partners like yourself to work with. Vicki, I'm curious, as a buyer, how does this slide make you feel?
I mean, it is daunting, right? If you kind of look at it in this kind of 5,000-foot view. But what I would like to really focus is think about what your business questions are you're trying to address. And is that tool going to be answering the core objectives that you're trying to achieve? And also really be honest with yourself about the stage of data readiness. So even though there are a lot of nice shiny tools out there and a lot of other companies are building cool stuff, doesn't mean that your organization is ready for it. So how I think about it is, let's think about the fundamental capabilities that you have right now and see if that's something that you should address first, particularly in the data side, and then evaluate what is the best tool for you, for the organization right now, as well as, hey, is this vendor company going to be growing with us as we're embarking into these journeys?
So we're going to talk about the evolution of the MarTech and data landscape. I think what we can all agree on is there's a lot of products that do a lot of different things. I think first, a couple years ago, I was in college and the mobile wave took over. Then the platform ecosystem wave really came to the forefront. We can think of your Salesforces, your Adobes, your Oracles, your Microsofts. You buy, one technology and let's connect it to another that sit inside that same suite. The CDP wave started, and I feel like that acronym has been overused by our partners in the marketing automation space and the ESP space. What does a CDP really mean? We'll dig into that a little bit later. The cloud data warehouse space took over. So are we investing in our cloud strategy? Are we investing on Google, on AWS, on Microsoft, Snowflakes, Databricks, whatever it may be? Customers are starting to think about Customer 360. And I think we've all heard the word AI. AI is incredibly important, and as AI has evolved, MCPs have now started to come to the forefront. So how is AI engaging with our downstream connections? How is it engaging with our data sources to make those algorithms work and connect and consume that data to build a new framework? But I think what this graphic from the MarTech composability survey really shows for me is that there's a lot of modularity out there. There's no one right answer, whether your source of truth is the data warehouse, which for most companies today, that is very much becoming a very realistic truth. For others, it's the CDP, which is sitting as that activation layer where your profile strategy, your activation strategy sits. And for some, it is more of your marketing automation solution and your CES, which is driving orchestration. So how do we connect with our customers? Vicki, when you think about Glassdoor's vision around kind of your source of truth, how did you guys think about that today?
Yeah.
And I guess what part of this visual kind of rings true for you?
Yeah. We at Glassdoor really think about data first and have very rigorous governance around what is the single source of truth. And we have embarked in a journey where there were multiple instances that there's similar data coming in, and you're like, okay, which ones to choose? And I believe that the data science group really did a really great job in terms of looking at governance and looking at, hey, we're the ones who are going to be approving these sources in order for the organization to be utilizing the same data. So that's really a journey and evolution that we've done before really thinking about, right, like what a CDP can help us with, like layering on that activation. So if I think about this, right, that data warehouse piece is super important. All of them, this is important, but at the end of the day, it's really, what does your data look like? And is that ready for these tools to be ingesting and really creating these meaningful experiences for our users?
Oh, okay. The buzz of AI. Raise your hand if you've used AI for your personal day-to-day life. A lot of you, wow. Raise your hand if you're a customer or a partner, if you're using AI for just workflow efficiencies for your day-to-day. And raise your hand if you are using AI to connect to your consumers. Not as many. So I think the theme when we talk about AI is incredibly real. It is here. I think a lot of companies are still going through planning and strategy and implementation of what does this really mean. I think there's a lot of opportunity when it comes to AI, but I think fundamentally being in the data space, one thing that rings true is we have companies that are going on a maturity curve of their data journey. And what that means is you really need to have a really strong and polished first-party data strategy before you go on this journey of AI, right? AI becomes an enabler. It becomes a multiplier for activation and orchestration and all these things that we want to do to get to that kind of North Star to create efficiencies so that your marketing teams can be much more effective with predictive models, with recommendations, with whatever that next best experience is that your consumer is expecting. Vicki, as we think about Glassdoor and your guys' journey with AI, would love to kind of give some very candid anecdotes on how you guys think about it, where you guys are at in that journey today, or how you guys are planning for it in the future.
Yeah. AI is here and it's very real. And as Glassdoor is a tech company, and I don't think this really applies to a lot of industries. I know some industries are like, hey, probably not, pretty risk averse, but for a company like Glassdoor, we really try to embrace AI. And in fact, that's going to be our top priority this year. In addition to the fact that we're actually as employees are actually going to be evaluated by the usage of AI and how effective we're using it. So how we think about it is in 3 layers, kind of like a sandwich. The first one is really the enterprise level, how Glassdoor is surfacing productivity tools for Glassdoorians to really help speed up their ways and working. The second piece is a team. So for me in marketing, in marketing operations, that means how is marketing going to use AI tools in the marketing organization level to make things more effective for our marketers. And then lastly, of course, there's the individual level. Those are things that our employees can definitely share, and some things can be fun, some things can be like, hey, these might be something that we can use and share amongst the whole group. And we actually have AI champions in each of our departments, from product, engineering, marketing, to share some of these findings.
So AI is definitely here, but again, just want to hit on, it is definitely an enabler to good data. So we're going to talk about CDP here in a second, but let's just jump into kind of the challenges, the trends, the insights. Key trends in the market, the cloud kind of data warehousing practice. Everyone's thinking about Customer 360. We have all these data sources. Where do we store our data? How do we engage? How do we interact? Whether, again, it's in a Google, an AWS, a Snowflake, whatever it may be. Typically, the idea of composability, I think, in the CDP landscape is a little bit different than how we might think about it in the realm of maybe CMS, where there's interoperability and flexibility in how you scale. In CDP, it's much more zero copy, activate out of the data lake, just keep it simple. Marketing does not want to get technical in the data. They just want to be able to use it and consume it. AI-powered personalization and predictions is incredibly important. Your CDP should fundamentally be able to recommend behavioral scoring, content scoring, interests, so that you can then personalize that experience in the omnichannel level to your consumers. There's use cases beyond marketing that really take a CDP implementation from kind of your just basic media activation use cases to much more mature CDP deployments. So thinking about how we're using CDPs for customer support, product recommendations, loyalty use cases, CLTV. And I think really the most important one, and really a core theme for ContentCon this year, is real-time activation, right? So I think anyone could do batch. You could probably do it from an Excel doc. Some companies are still doing that today. So moving from batch to real-time and thinking about what is the importance of real-time as we're engaging with consumers the moment they come on our website, the moment they open an email, the moment they click on an ad or open their phone or scan into that live ticket concert, whatever it may be. But ultimately, it's going back to this theme of how do we tie the knot between content and data and that end user experience that we're building. I think you saw a lot of that today in the kind of keynote demo that Connor and John Kelly did. But I think that's incredibly important, right? Everyone's asking the question around, we've invested all this money in our data. How do we start to get it to talk to our CMS and the content that we've built? And then how do we build those best-in-class experiences? Vicki, when you kind of think about these trends at Glassdoor, which one is really, really kind of like top of mind for you guys, or which have been kind of the big themes that you guys have discussed as you've built out kind of a maturity curve within the organization?
Yeah, for us, it's really important to make sure that product and everyone else actually understands what we're doing. In Glassdoor, it's really a product-first company, so marketing comes second. So how we think about it is, hey, how can we break down these silos and actually use the data and share the data that we have together and leverage the platforms together to make a great user experience? So all these key trends, I mean, it all culminates to like, how do we serve our users better at that moment, that serving that moment at the right time.
So we'll talk about kind of core challenges. I think any team that is evaluating any product, there's always kind of hiccups or bumps in the road that are very real that you need to plan for. I think when we think about any sort of data activation or data migration, what is the complexity of the data that you have in front of you? I think a lot of the time you hear teams say, we're siloed, our CRM doesn't connect to our data lake, our CRM doesn't connect to our ESP, our CRM doesn't connect to our marketing automation solution, right? Or A/B testing solution, or, so I think there's a lot of layers that go into onboarding or planning for, a data activation solution. I think this is the less sexy part of any CDP or data kind of strategy is identity, which is very real, which evolves over time. So if you're a B2B company, you're thinking about the latest and greatest account-based marketing strategy that you're building. And that means we're looking at tiered accounts, right? And so how do we do account roll-up properly that engages with our ABM solution and providers? But then we're also thinking on the B2C side. So a company like Glassdoor that has a B2B2C model in business where they have, companies that are buying Glassdoor so that they can provide the latest and greatest reviews. And then you have consumers that are looking for jobs. They're looking for market research. They're looking for their next career opportunity. And that's a completely different perspective where that consumer might have multiple emails. So how are we doing deterministic? How are we doing probabilistic? How are we doing fuzzy matching? Or what happens when we have multiple emails to the same consumer? Organizational readiness, and I think we'll talk about this in Glassdoor's story, but this is very much a cross-functional solution. So thinking bigger of, you're not just buying a product, you are buying and shifting the cultural foundation of your company. You're getting teams that historically don't talk to each other to start to communicate with each other in a way that might feel a little bit scary. So how are we planning as an organization for data engineering, for marketing, for web dev teams to actually start to communicate so that we have a seamless workflow across the business? And then understanding the role of the CDP. So a lot of the time, a CDP, again, I think the acronym has been overused in the market, but the role of the CDP, what is it? How does it engage with your cloud strategy and the investment you're making in the cloud? How is it different than your CRM? And then also understanding how it's different from your ESP and marketing automation and journey orchestration solutions. And then I think at the very end of this is proving ROI. What does that look like? What's the framework? How do we actually test and iterate and optimize on use cases that get us to value? So I'm going to pause here, and we'll kind of talk about these themes in the context of Glassdoor's journey. But Vicki, I would love for you to kind of identify when you guys were going through the buying process, I think even starting back to pre-COVID when you told us no at the finish line, like what did CDP mean to you? Yeah. And why did you even embark on that journey? And maybe take the audience through B2B where we started and B2C and kind of that whole, last, what I would say 4 years, that journey we've been on.
It's been a long time. I'd love to. Really, when it comes down to it, is a cultural and data shift that we have to make in marketing and influencing across engineering and product teams to make this happen. If you think about it, again, what I've been saying is marketing needs come second. The data that we need is siloed. It's really hard to pull. It's behind some secret doors. I don't know. It's really hard to really activate a lot of the audiences and at real time and at scale. So at that time, we really worked with a product champion to have them have the knowledge of what CDP means, right? At that time, CDP was such a buzzword. It was really hard for people to really understand clearly what it is. CDP, in a data analytics, data engineering standpoint, is really that data layer that actually sends out, right, like orchestrates the data. But for marketing, it's different. For us, is really thinking about, hey, how can I understand this user holistically, combining with what their behaviors look like, what do they like to see, what are the topics of interest, and then quickly activate them. So during these CDP conversations, we realized that, hey, we're actually talking about two different things. And this is kind of how we embarked on the journey of, hey, data science, data engineering team, please, you can continue that journey, but marketing is going to look at things that are really applicable for us. We cannot wait for data scientists, for engineering to give us these lists. We need to activate now. So how can we solution that? At the end of the day, we really realized that, and there's a shift too in the leadership, on the leadership front to talk about buying versus building. And Glassdoor was very much a build company, and we really have to make that shift to really show the value of, hey, if we're buying the cost and the time savings, it's something that we need to show and generate ROI in order for the leadership to begin to think, hey, I think we should start buying. This might be a good path to go. So at the end, this 4-year journey with JR, we were able to really influence the organization to think about how that future and tech purchase journey looks like in the context of marketing and how we can be adaptable in the changes, and really the CDP piece with Lytics or Contentstack CDP is the way to go.
How did you think about, so like there's a lot of companies here at ContentCon this year that are multi. There's multi-brands, multiple regions, multiple languages. So thinking about just Glassdoor's business model, you guys are B2B and you're B2C.
Yep.
How did you guys kind of like tactically plan? And I'll go to the next slide here, but would love to hear even just internal discussions that take place, because I think, again, this becomes this cross-functional kind of behemoth of a project. And CDP doesn't have to be that. So would love to hear how just internally those discussions took place, why you started with B2B over B2C, and then would love to kind of jump into this a little bit more from a channel perspective. Yeah, sure.
So we knew we had to change. At that time, B2B and B2C marketing were very separate. Separate leadership, separate ways of working, and we knew in order to save time and cost and make sure that we're cross-trained on every platform, we have to consolidate. At that time, in the B2B side, we're using Marketo, which I think it's a archaic dinosaur. And we really had to detangle a lot from Marketo. So one of the things we think about when we're thinking about implementation and proof of concept is really like speed to market. And really getting rid of Marketo was our number 1 goal at that time. The size of the audiences are way smaller, even though they have huge impact. The data untangling and the lead routing, all of those are really great challenges that we have to make in order to have that transition. And so that was kind of our first use case, or really rather proof of concept for Glassdoor, to make sure, hey, like there is value here. We are removing away ourselves from Marketo, which is, hey, in order to do lead scoring, we have to bring in an agency. Now we're talking about, hey, you want to do lead scoring? We have 10,000 ways to do it. We have behavioral scoring. We have customer insights. We have predictability. There's a lot of really great insights at your fingertips to build a model for our sales team for handing off leads from marketing to sales. So that's the journey that we did. And then eventually we were able to prove that ROI really quickly for us to get approval for B2C, which, as you can tell, it's like, I would say 10 to 100 times fold in terms of audiences. But at the end of the day, it's still really trying to have this end goal of delighting our users, having a delightful experience. So that's kind of like how our journey is. We kind of start small, look at the North Star, and then go from there and scale.
How do you guys think about the omni-channel? So when you think about CDP, right, being that kind of source of truth on top of your guys' cloud infrastructure, how do you guys think about CDP impacting the omni-channel? I know we started out just very simple. How do we get to stronger lead acquisition in the B2B funnel? Right. But now, if you look at engagement, we're across advertising, we're across your ESP, push, in-app, web notifications. So what does it kind of take to get there?
I think everyone loves to talk about integrated marketing, omni-channel, and when it comes to actually executing it, we kind of do it not in a so great way. So before Lytics, we were able to say, yeah, we're using the same audience, kind of, sort of, and hoping for the best, really. But we don't really understand what the cost and effect, is there a duplicate effort there? Is it really necessary to have journeys in different layers? Are we sending emails and notifications and they're really annoyed? We really don't have that answer. And with the CDP, we're able to really think through these customer journeys, right? I don't think these are really foreign to all of our marketers. It's from awareness all the way to getting them engaged, getting them reactivated. What are the different levels of channels do we use and leverage to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at? And I would say CDP is the way to actually that we can start from there. We can start ideating from here to segments, here to audiences, here are the insights that we have, and from there really generate and understand, hey, JR really looks at push instead of emails. All right, let's create these flows for them. Instead of bombarding them with both emails and push all this at the same time, we can now then really look at iterating and do incrementality testing in a really meaningful way.
So we're going to talk about driving adoption and value. I think what we've seen in hundreds of CDP implementations that we've done at Lytics is there is no one right way, but there are correct frameworks as we're thinking about cross-functional alignment inside an enterprise. So again, we have data engineers that are hands-on keyboard with the data. We have data scientists that are building segments and building models on top of that and building custom scores that feed into the CDP. We have marketing teams that want to use that but don't want to get hands-on keyboard with the data. So how do we make that accessible and let them, drive and launch campaigns to your orchestration and A/B testing and personalization solutions? We have content teams, right, that are building content. They want to take that data and those real-time insights and connect them to that best-in-class experience. And so when we think about driving adoption, being cross-functional is incredibly important. And so I think the big model that we've seen be really successful when we talk about driving value and getting to value quickly is really the idea of a COE, a Center of Excellence. I think a lot of companies obviously are doing this today, but you would be surprised how many companies do not plan for a cross-functional tactical team. And when we think about success, those first 100 days getting to success, start small, scale fast is a really generic phrase. But I think a lot of teams that we speak with are always trying to boil the ocean when they're planning for a large data function or practice or planning for use cases. The golden record data foundation powers scalability. So understanding what data is important to you, what use cases do marketers want to actually activate on, and then how are data teams providing and structuring that data and making it accessible for their marketing teams to actually use quickly. The COE function is incredibly important. We don't want 100 people in the solution on day one. We want a small tactical team that is technical, that can move quickly and rapidly on onboarding, infrastructure, integrations, and then helping get to that North Star as quickly as possible. And then the CDP really acts as that kind of core customer identity solution. So how are we building that North Star? How are we building that single source of truth for a business that they then deploy across web, email, mobile, and every other channel that's important? Vicki, as we went through planning with the Glassdoor team, I know, and I don't know if anyone in the audience actually knows this, but Glassdoor's sister company is Indeed, and I think there's some folks in the room. But as you guys were thinking about resourcing for success, what did that look like? And because you sit in this kind of middle ground between data and marketing. Nobody can really talk about it better, right? This kind of middle ground in the digital realm. How did you guys plan around a COE? What do those discussions look like? What are, I guess, from your perspective, like some of those best practices as you're building a team that's going to manage a tool that is going to essentially own all of the data practice across a large enterprise like Glassdoor?
So my team is the Center of Excellence in Marketing Operations, and it really comprises a really small team. When we started, we only had Jonathan, one person, along with me, to do this. And we really, this is a cross-channel, cross-partnership effort, right? As I talked about this whole cultural shift, the data shift, we really have to talk to product engineering and to showcase the value. And how we did that was we really pinpointed, like you said, starting small, really pinpointed high value, one high value use case, and really tag on the tangible outcome. And when I talk about tangible outcomes, it's not just at the end of the day like an ROI. It's, hey, are we talking about speed to market? Are we saving cost and time because we're not, bothering like 3 different other teams? And of course, revenue acceleration and the quality of the users that we're engaging. And so with that said, we were able to work. Once we identified and established that, we were able to identify that with the CDP team, make sure that our data is integrated and aligned, and really do that proof of concept to quickly realize value within the 100 days that you're talking about.
How has your COE team changed maybe in the last 4 years? So I know you talked about you and one other person.
Right.
At the very beginning of the journey, but what does that look like today? What does maturity look like in investing and planning and resourcing around, scaling a data strategy?
Yeah, I was going to continue that. That was great. Great follow-up question. For us, the journey doesn't end in, hey, we're implementing this great tool, have at it. We're really also a team that is enabling our marketers, continuing to support them, and maybe using us as a conduit between our marketers and our vendors to be like, hey, there are new features that are coming up that'll be applicable to your use case, or really sitting down and listening to our marketers and really listen to them as they're trying to figure out, hey, what are the blockers that we have? And we'll bring it back to our vendors and to JR to figure out what the next steps are. And thankfully, because we've been partners for so long, the product team has been amazing. For example, this, I would say April, we onboarded an ad agency really quickly, really needed a lot of capabilities on the CAPI side. At that time, the CDP was able to do a few, and then we realized quickly that there are some bugs that needs to be addressed, and this is business mission critical because we're paying the agency to activate, but without that, we're not activated. We're not activating at the same time. So I worked with the TAM, Sean, at that time, and he was able to really be the voice of the customer, really escalate this quickly to get this resolved, and I was so appreciative of that. So like one of the things is really too, choosing a CDP vendor that is really gonna be by your side and have that and continue to have this journey with you as you're scaling.
So when we're thinking about kind of deployment, and even, thinking about a new maturity model or kind of phase 2 or phase 3 or phase 4, again, this sounds very basic, but I think one theme that we hear all the time when we're planning for North Star or we're planning for, CDP deployment, companies try and boil the ocean. And I think if you make the scope a little bit too big, we're not getting to that meaningful outcome. We're not getting to value quickly. We're kind of diluting, moving fast, moving rapidly, and scaling actual successful deployments. And I think this is, probably applicable to every technology that you guys are using, consuming, and deploying for your customers. But I think when we think about CDP, the first one is to be incredibly aligned on clarity. And so again, this is going back to that center of excellence, but understanding what data do we actually need to get to empower our North Star. So whether that is your data lake being the source of truth, whether that is the CDP being the source of truth, or the activation layer on top of your cloud, it's making sure that we have cross-channel multi-source insights. So what is the tag picking up? What are the analytics picking up? And then how are we building segments off that? I think a lot of companies struggle to understand what is actually evergreen and always on versus what are those core categories that actually are impacting activation. And then lastly, getting to value. So starting small, kind of taking a step back and really understanding what are those core use cases, which ones are applicable to actual channel activation. So some segments might be most applicable to email. Others are going to be more applicable to web. And how do we differentiate? What are the attributes that go into that? And then how do we actually get to ROI? Because I think with any data and MarTech solution, at the end of the day, your goal is to use consumer data to drive revenue across channels and continuously drive incremental lift. So Vicki, as we think about kind of best practices of how you guys approached kind of implementation and even just kind of around clarity, segmentation, and value, would love to kind of hear your thoughts. What worked really, really well for Glassdoor, and now we're kind of kickstarting what I would call phase 4 with Glassdoor on this journey of personalization. How are you guys planning for that today, and what kind of frameworks are you guys implementing across 2 cross-functional business units in the B2B and B2C side?
Yeah. For us, it's not any different, B2B or B2C. At the end of the day, it's just really defining what the value is that we're trying to drive. And so what we usually do is we do a lot of planning, right, beforehand, and really trying to test small, like you said. So right now for B2C, we're really trying to prove out the value of omni-channel marketing, right? Like how are we playing in these different channels and not bombarding our users with 10,000 messages all at once, and really have this really thoughtful process of, hey, if they're, just thinking about their user journey, right? If you're onboarding, you're probably pretty active. You want us to be emailing you. You probably want us to be sending you push messages. However, as you're dropping off the adoption curve, right, you're talking about reactivation, you're probably not looking at our emails. You're probably not looking at our notifications. So we want to think about, okay, the next best logical step is let's try to show up where you're at, whether it's your favorite social media platforms, LinkedIn, Reddit, or Meta. We want to be where you're at to capture your attention and bring you back to our site and make sure that you're remembering us as a brand, right? So that's kind of like how we're doing this, both in B2B and B2C. So across both of them, it's not that different. When you're talking B2B, it's like a buyer's journey. When you're talking B2C, it's a job user journey, a career journey.
And then when you think about use case activation, how does the business tactically think about your guys' strategy? Is it you're looking at your campaign roadmap and you're planning around segmentation around those core events through the year? Is it more so planning around kind of spending across channels? How does Glassdoor fundamentally think about the CDP impacting those channels? Yeah,
so I mean, how we plan is that we do have a limited budget, but we plan in a 3-month cycle. So we want to be really agile. And not to say that within those 3 months, if we have planned something, if things go off the rails, we're not changing. So we would meet with our marketing leaders with kind of what our goals are trying to be given the budget that we have, and telling them, hey, this is what we're trying to do. These are the tests that we're doing. However, if that's something that is not working, here's plan B, and this is what we're going to be achieving. So we're trying to keep it really agile, and thanks to the CDP, we really can have the ability to do that and pivot quickly.
So talking a little bit from kind of where you guys are to where you guys are today, I think it's fair to say like Glassdoor has been on this very, very long journey with us. I think when you're reading that piece on the left about using and building, segments, which took weeks, Vicki, out of Excel docs, to kind of where you guys are today. What does the future look like? What gets the business really excited? I know we've been talking about personalization. Obviously, you guys have been a long-time Lytics customer. So how are you guys thinking about the next 12, 24, 36 months? What gets the business really excited, whether that's AI or personalization?
I think we talked about a little bit about AI already, but what I think everyone is super excited about AI, but what they don't really think about it is how does it really work? So my job at Glassdoor is really educate them. Hey, in order to have these amazing AI tools, let's talk about the fundamentals. Let's talk about the data that we have that's feeding into these AI tools to make sure that the data that we have is solid, it's a single source of truth, is clean, and produce the outcomes that you want. So that's number one. And for us, when we think about all these future planning, we're doing it a little bit at a time. Like, how we did the POC with here's a small use case. Let's look at how you can drive revenue acceleration. One of the things that we're doing with our sister company is they also have different AI tools. So in order for us to really encourage that multi-tenancy initiative, they're giving us access to these tools and really helping us to, while they're acquiring these tools, they might not have use cases sometimes to really prove that value. But with our team of Center of Excellence, we can. So we can scale really quickly, define use cases really, really quickly, and drive impact. Oh, and then also, actually, within the next 12 to 36 months, we're also working with our amazing NT team of web engineering to bring on Contentstack. So when we think about it, we're right now in marketing website, we're using WordPress, which is not stellar, but we're really looking forward to migrating and moving to Contentstack because this only adds to that layer of data activation, but using Contentstack as that data layer to really serve and have this really continuous, seamless journey that our users are going to see in the future. So we're really excited about that as well.
And I think that's it. I think we have about 12 minutes, so there's a microphone at the front if anyone has questions. Or you can just raise your hand, because that's a bit of a trek. Or
we can pass the microphones, too. You don't have to walk up here like a one runway. There you go.
Neha would be...
And it doesn't work. Oh, there it is, so it's more of a process question. We're talking about starting a center of excellence. For us, even just getting people thinking about content and connecting these different pieces that we have. Could you just talk real quick about what was the cross-section of that group, what it looked like, and then when you say things like it was your role to sort of advocate and help them through these, these first quick win examples, how were they even interested in that? How did they even know? How did you know that there were meetings there that you should go to and kind of all that kind of stuff?
Thank you for the question. Like I said, it's a long journey. It's not just one conversation and they're like, I get it. It's a lot of, hey, what are you all trying to do? And sometimes it's really aligning with what their goals are with the product team and the engineering team. So without alignment between our cross-functional partners, I don't think we would have been able to stand up the CDP, right? For the engineers, we're talking about, hey, we're gonna not bug you anymore if we have this. All you have to do is really help us with the data integration and maintain that, but you're gonna have a lot of savings. On the product team, we're talking about, hey, you have product emails, we have marketing emails. What if you can imagine a world that we can talk about emails, just emails? It's not product versus marketing. We're talking about one user journey. what does that look like in that world? So in order for us to even talk about these center of excellence teams, we have to talk about what's in it for them, right? What's in it for them? What's in it for you? What is a win-win situation? And then you can cultivate those people that are really going to be at bat with you, for you. It's like, yep, Lytics can do this. If you need more information, please, or Contentstack CDP, please let Vicki know. And that is how you influence your teams and cross-channel leaders to really get that ball rolling. Runway song, no?
Question. So I guess when I think about, in general, in digital space, I'm trying to think about from the user experience.
Yes.
And when I think about the power of analytics and how you connect information, and I think at the end of the day, it's what it's doing is it's helping you solve a problem that someone has with the product that they're trying to use you for. Can you give a scenario in which the analytics allowed you to identify a very specific, maybe it's a user journey.
Yeah.
For example, someone's, if I'm looking on Glassdoor, I'm trying to find, salaries for, typical job range, et cetera. And
Right.
maybe they're struggling to compare companies or something like that. Is there a specific scenario in which you are able to identify a specific use case and you're like, you know what, hey, this is an issue. You grabbed that insight, you took it to the right team, they solved that, and then you got to see the impact of such a move.
Yeah.
Can you tell a story around that?
Yeah. We have many stories about that. And a lot of it is actually, thanks to the CP, we did a lot of that within marketing and share results. One of the earliest wins that we have is the ability to understand and predict who are our leads that are most likely to convert. And so in order to do that, we really need to rely on the CDP to give us behavioral insights, so scoring, and also the context. So what are the affinities? What are the content that they like? And together, what we did within the CDP is that we put it in a lookalike audience, so not unlike what you've seen today in the keynote, and really understand, hey, these users, there's these bunch of users that have the probability of actually either converting or churning. So like using that analytics and that insight from lookalike models, we were able to build journeys, right? So journeys about, hey, these people are about to churn. What are we gonna do to keep them interested and keep them warm? Hey, these people are really interested. Instead of keeping them warm, let's have the salespeople talk to them right now. And we were able to do that really at the marketer's fingertips really quickly. And what we've seen is we have been able to build a campaign really quick, 2 campaigns really quickly, in fact. And we were able to do a lot of reactivation, which I would say, frankly, is not as good because, reactivation usually is not gangbusters, is not that great. But we were able to see the level of interest and the pushing and speeding up the sales process really help us in terms of converting our customers, our prospects into customers. But I have many stories about that. Like using the lookalike audience is so easy. We don't really need like a machine learning person, a data science person. We're actually giving these tools with the hands of the marketers, which knows our audiences really well, to come up with these insights, which is amazing. And of course, while we do have data scientists, we have machine learning users, they're doing more of these mature models that are giving us general insights, and then we can dig deeper from there.
Questions in the crowd? Yeah.
So what you were referring to in terms of establishing a single source of truth, getting your data clean, kind of that foundational task.
Yeah.
It can be a really big task for a lot of companies.
Yes.
And they might think that they're kind of looking up at Mount Everest, not really knowing where to start. I think a lot of what we heard about data and insights might help in that regard, but any suggestions for companies that may not know where to start or might be a little bit scared of that foundational task?
Yeah. I don't know, JR, is that your question or my question?
I can approach it from the vendor's perspective. I think for a lot of companies, if you're working with a client, or you are a company yourself that's investing in the cloud, usually the cloud is going to be your source of truth. The CDP then becomes the activation layer on top of that. So all your data sources are, piping and building essentially that data pipeline into a BigQuery, a Snowflake, a Databricks. And so we only want to bring in the data that is going to support those use cases. We only want to bring in those attributes. And then we also want to bring in that contextual layer, which is the real time, to then build on top of that and kind of stitch together. I think it really starts in the data dictionary, truthfully. This is something that I think in any CDP implementation, data strategy or maturity curve that we're going on, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and beyond, it all goes back to that data dictionary. So what data do you have available? What events are we bringing in, right, to support those use cases? And then how are we supplementing with third-party data, or even thinking about kind of like clean room use cases where we're partnering with others and collaborating of data and insights. So I don't think there's one right answer. I think depending on where that company is in that kind of in their cloud infrastructure or what their MarTech stack looks like, it could be it's all essentially going zero copy through the CDP and we're querying out of the data lake. The CDP could also become an activation layer and we're doing that. Or it could be a bit of a hybrid model, which a lot of our enterprise customers are doing.
Yeah, for me, I think our organization, we're really lucky that we have these smart people that really realize, hey, our data scientists and our day-to-day users are pulling from five different sources and say, this is it. And so the suggestion really is like, hey, my marketing organization is telling me that in order to scale, we need to personalize and all these buzzwords, right? But in order to do that, let's look at like what is happening in their data. And like if you can say, hey, this first name has 5 different sources, so where should I go? It's like something that's, I think showing them too, even if you're not in a position of like leadership, and I feel like little things like that can like prove your worth of saying, hey, this is what you're telling us to do. However, the roadblock is there are many sources of truth that's really blocking my way to think about how on the path of personalization at scale, how am I going to achieve my job? And in order to do that, it's just like showing them. And I've been in that path and seat before too, and it's not easy. So yeah.
I think we have a little less than 5 minutes, so probably a couple more, if there are any. And I know there's some folks in the room who are actively evaluating CDP, so if you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask. Yeah. Whatever works for you.
What's the question? Can we?
How did you think about personalization from a business perspective? Did you feel like you had to get the CDP fully up and running? Did you feel like you could approach it earlier in the implementation process?
Yeah, no. I think we can think about personalization in different stages. And it doesn't have to be a CDP as like, it's like 0 to like rockets. Like that's not what we need to think about. It's just small baby steps. So if you think about it, like let's just talk about, hey, how can you group your users or your audiences in a way that's meaningful, right? And even if you don't have, say, like a lifetime value or anything that's sophisticated, you could probably understand it in a way that and just start with a theory, right? Like here are like 3 groups of audiences that I think we should start with, and let's build a journey or a test and see what the effectiveness looks like. So you can start really small, and I think you're right, JR, boiling the ocean is not what we want to do. So like think about things that you can start small and prove, and then continue to iterate. And then you can say, hey, see, this is where at a time we need to have a tool that's going to be really helping us with that.
Yeah, and I think personalization evolves as your business evolves. Your data is evolving, your consumer behavior is evolving. You might be putting new products into the market. Your content's changing. You're developing and buying new technology. So that's pulling new data attributes and or has new capabilities. So I think personalization in phase 1 versus phase 5 will look a lot different, because now we're probably thinking about how does AI impact personalization.
Yeah.
And what does next best action, next best content recommendation, or product recommendation look like? So I think it's also fair to say personalization means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. That could be as simple as building a highly targeted audience and pushing it to your email service provider. Building in personalized content recommendations into your ESP, like an Iterable or a Braze or a Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Those are absolutely things you can do in day 1, but maybe your data set isn't as evolved. And so that could fundamentally change in your first 30 days versus 12 months down the line. I think our lovely friend in the audience had a timer, so I think we might be all wrapped up.
I think we're done.
But thank you guys for joining today. If you do have any questions, feel free to bug Vicki. She's here till Friday.
Yes, I'm happy to be of it.
And enjoy the rest of ContentCon.
Thank you.